Welcome back to chapter 28. We're going to start with utopias. First off, we're going to talk about the constructivism movement. So we're going to talk about the De Stijl, or the style, from Amsterdam, the Baja in Germany, and then the constructivist productivism from Russia. So a little background. The Russian Revolution happened in 1917. Also known as the October Revolution. That needs to be kind of in the back of your mind about what had just happened. So let's start off with Vladimir Tatlin. This is Project for Monument to the Third International. So Tatlin is a communist. And so this is part of the goal of creating a utopian society. And the idea here is to build this utopian society out of modern machinery, mass-produced items, the efficiency of industrial materials. So with all of these things, you're able to create this great society that everyone can participate in. So part of the architecture is that it is very streamlined and machine-like, that form follows function. Objects are stripped of ornamentation because it is not necessary. And that ornamentation was really associated with the bourgeois, that ruling class that has let them down. This was exhibited in 1919 in Petrograd, or St. Petersburg, and then in Moscow in 1920. So this is a model for a building that was never actually built, but if it was, the building would have been 1,300 feet high. It would have been the tallest structure at the time. We have a metal spiral frame tilted at an angle, and inside we have a glass cube, a glass cylinder, and another glass cube. And so these are steel and glass parts that are all intertwined. Now, they were intertwined as well as the glass units were supposed to revolve. One of them was meant to make a revolution once a year. One of them was meant to make a complete revolution once a month. And the third one once a day. This would have been, if built, the propaganda center for the Communist Third International. Alexander Rodchenko. This is an advertisement. Books. So Rodchenko was making suprematist paintings and constructivist assemblages. And then he started focusing on graphic design. This is actually a literacy poster. And the word that's coming out of her mouth in the megaphone shape is books. The words that are coming out over here say, translated, in all spheres of knowledge. You can see that Alexander has combined this photograph of this woman along with the word books being in the megaphone shape to create the image. Now we come to De Stijl, or the style. Piet Mondrian founded De Stijl with the painter Theo van Doesburg and the architect Gerrit Rietveld. They sought to create, through abstraction, total environments that were so perfect they embodied universal harmony. They sought universal order to eradicate nationalism and, again, to create a utopian ideal of spiritual harmony. This is Piet Mondrian's composition number 2, or composition with red, blue, and yellow. He was very much interested with the mathematical structure to the universe and believed that rational manipulations of geometric forms was the basis of art, and this was called neoplasticism. He thought that in his art you could see the underlying structure of the universe. He believed that his paintings created a perfect harmony, every element creating this harmony. Now you'll notice that he uses primary colors. You'll also notice that we have these thick black lines separating the colors. But if you look very closely, you will notice that the black lines vary in thickness. They're not all the same thickness. The other thing is that the frame is a fundamental part of the piece, and he paints these frames accordingly. So in this case, we have white instead of black. Black would have been very limiting. It would have actually closed in the space. In this case, it's white, so the space keeps going. This is part of his idea of the universal harmony. Gerrit Rietveld, interior of the Schroeder house with a red-blue chair. Gerrit Rietveld, he was a furniture maker, became a self-taught architect. He is basically modeling the Piet Mondrian's style, but in the interior of the house and with the furniture. So you can see that we have blocks of primary colors, we have blocks of white, and we have strips of black, and just the chair in itself looks like a Mondrian painting, but in 3 dimensions. So we have a red plane, a blue plane, we have these black lines, and we have these great yellow squares on the edges. Think of the Mondrian style painting, but being imposed on a room and the furnishings. This is Gerrit Rietveld's Schroeder house, the exterior. We have these blocks of color, or in this case, mainly whites and grays, but with these black lines intersecting. This was built onto an end of row houses. We have a Wright-influenced cantilevered roof coming on over here. Now we go to the Bauhaus. This was an art and design school founded in Weimar, Germany in 1919 by Walter Gropius. The goal was to design modern, high-quality products with the idea of creating this utopian vision. The utilitarian design was for the, quote, new man. This was a marriage of art and technology. Again, they were using primary forms and colors to create a standard for the interiors of these buildings. This is a living room of the Gropius house, 1927. The furniture and the lighting were by Marcel Breuer. This is Walter Gropius' shop block. This is a Bauhaus building designed by Gropius in 1925. There are 3 L-shaped wings off a central hub. 1 is for workshops, 2 is for classrooms, and the 3rd is an auditorium or theater building. Again, we're minimizing into these architectural shapes. The idea is that we've got these almost glass blocks, if you will, because we have so much glass. And then again, the fundamental structure of the building becomes a design element. The floors themselves become these black lines. The posts that are holding up parts of the building, again, become these design elements. Le Corbusier, Villa Savoy. Le Corbusier, his real name was Charles Edouard Généré. He was Swiss. He started out as a painter, became an architect. He was very much interested in purism and the supremacy of machine aesthetic. He liked using ferroconcrete and steel-reinforced concrete in his buildings. His idea was to build these inexpensive, easy-to-use, strong buildings. He decided to create these 5 points of an ideal home. The first was that there was no ground floor, that the house was raised on columns. And you can see that in this image. The second is that the flat roof was used as a garden terrace. The third was that there was an open floor plan with partitions slotted between supports. The fourth was free composition of exterior curtain walls. And the 5th was ribbon horizontal windows, as you can see here. So this is right outside of Paris. Again, we have the raised living space, the ribbon windows, the flat terrace roof, all of these elements that he thought designed a ideal home. Here is an interior shot, so you can see the garden terrace element, and you can also see how the living goes into the garden terrace. There is walls of glass, but that's about it. There really isn't these typical exterior walls that we're used to seeing. He liked this open floor plan, again, very much influenced by Frank Lloyd Wright. Ferdinand Léger, Three Women, or Le Grand Déjeuner. Le Grand Déjeuner means great breakfast. Léger is a cubist. You can see that. He's also a purist. A purism means that he's reducing all artistic expression to abstract purity that reflected the machine aesthetic. So you can see that these three women have been abstracted into shapes. We see circles, we see ovals, but we have abstracted into these various shapes. All their surroundings are also into shapes, from the carpet on the floor, that's abstracted into triangles, to the stripes over here, to the couch that they're sitting on that's been abstracted into these cylinders. He also, you notice, likes to use primary colors. Several similarities between this and Picasso's Les Demoiselles d'Avignon. And we have the idea that maybe these women are in a brothel. Typically, you don't see groups of women hanging out nude all the time. And so you have these women who are very comfortable sitting nude. And again, they're all staring directly at you, the viewer. Joseph Stella, The Voice of the City, New York Interpreted. Joseph Stella was an Italian immigrant to America. He created this series. These are 5 panels, 8 feet high. They all have to do with New York City. He has abstracted these elements of New York into color and light. This is the full piece. You've got 5 paintings, 5 panels. So in the center, you have the Flatiron Building. We've got the city towers, and you can see the buildings, the skyscrapers reaching up to the sky. Flanking that, we have these 2 panels, one of which is the Great White Way, and this is Broadway. So think of the lights and the colors of Broadway. The other is Times Square. So again, we have lights and color, but we're not having specific elements from that. So think of almost like you're squinting your eyes going down at night, where you have all these lights and colors from these signs, and you're just getting just bits and pieces of it. Then we have the harbor of the Hudson River. So we see some elements of the harbor and of boats here. And then on the far right, we have the Brooklyn Bridge. So these are all elements of modernity, elements of what he saw as progress. This is the port. This is the harbor of the Hudson River. So we see some elements of boats. We see some of their lines that would normally hold their sails. We see some of these, again, they're just bits and pieces. Down here we've got almost like their spotlights coming through. This is the White Way. So this is detailing Broadway. So if you're going down Broadway and you're seeing all of these marquees on the side. So again, nothing too specific. It's almost we just have these various elements. It's like we're looking at a prism, and we just have the lights and colors just all coming at you. This is the Flatiron Building, or the skyscrapers. And so we have, again, New York was really, this is the 20s. We have all these skyscrapers just going up in record pace. So we have them kind of represented in general here. And this is the White Way too. This is the Times Square element. Again, the lights and color. And the bridge, or the Brooklyn Bridge. All of these elements, all of these panels are representing modernity. They're representing this progress. This is the 1920s, the roaring 20s. We're really seeing everything in a very positive, optimistic light. This is Paul Strand's Wire Wheel. This is a close-up of the wheel of a Model T Ford. This is the machine age. We have these automobiles that are taking over the city. This is a fantastic improvement on horse-drawn carriages. Charles Demuth, My Egypt. Demuth was from Pennsylvania. You can see he really likes geometric elements in his work, very much leaning on cubism here, but a little more representational than a traditional cubist piece, but definitely liking to simplify the designs into geometric shapes. Art Deco. Art Deco emerged in 1925 at the Exhibition of Decorative and Industrial Art in Paris. This is replacing the Art Nouveau, which is very organic, very much leaning on nature. Now we are very much looking to the machine age. So we're looking at geometric form, lots of sharp angles, very streamlined. Again, not looking at a lot of extra flourishes, but we'll have a few extra here and there. Also looking at different cultures. So you will see some Native American and pre-Columbian design patterns that are sneaking into the Art Deco designs. We tend to have lots of opulent materials, lots of shiny, reflective surfaces. Tulsa actually has some wonderful Art Deco buildings. This is the Chrysler Building in New York by William Van Allen. This is 77 stories, finished in 1930. Now, the Empire State Building was 102 stories, also in 1930. So we've got this very geometric building, long rectangular building, but it's tapering into this almost flame-like top. So we've got these wonderful arches here at the top of the building. We have this stainless steel crown. We have gargoyles on the corners of the buildings. The gargoyles look like the head mounts for the 1929 Chryslers. Georgia O'Keeffe. Georgia O'Keeffe was involved with Stieglitz starting in 1918. She married him in 1924. Now, at this time, Stieglitz is very much still involved with these new artists in New York City. So remember, Stieglitz had his 291 gallery in New York representing all these new artists. And that was from 1905 to 1917. In 1928, he opened another gallery called An American Place. Georgia O'Keeffe started splitting her time between New York and New Mexico, starting in 1929. She purchased the now famous Ghost Ranch in 1940. By 1949, she had made a permanent home in Taos. Stieglitz had died in 1946. Unlike the rumor you've probably all heard by now that Georgia O'Keeffe's flower paintings have to do with a part of the female anatomy, they do not. What she was doing was she was doing close-up paintings of these flowers and even abstracting them into these shapes and colors. Any references to female anatomy are by happenstance or by God's design. She also does other series. So she does several series based on some of the bones that she finds there at the Ghost Ranch and other places in New Mexico. She also does several series of landscapes as well. By 1972, she had macular degeneration and only had peripheral vision. So she actually stopped painting. Edward Weston. This is a photograph, again, a close-up photograph of a pepper. Focusing in, again, using light and shadow in the black and white photography to focus on the shapes. Not necessarily the fact that it's a pepper, but looking at the shape and how the light is hitting it. Grant Wood, American Gothic. Grant Wood was from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. This is supposed to be a window into the Midwest. So the idea between American Gothic is not a husband and wife. It is supposed to be a father and the spinster daughter. These are pioneers. These are the typical Midwestern people. He specifically put them in more old-fashioned clothes, the idea that they are against progress, staunchly standing firm in their values and ideas. The title American Gothic comes from the style of house in the background. It is a Carpenter Gothic house. You will notice that there's actually several crosses in this piece, from the windows, as you can see here, to the pitchfork. You'll also notice that there is a steeple here in the background. The models for this piece were his sister Nan and his dentist, B.H. McKeeby. The Harlem Renaissance. The Harlem Renaissance started in New York City's Harlem and continued in Chicago's South Side. This is a renaissance of African American artists. This is Jacob Lawrence's. In the North, the Negro had better educational facilities, from the series The Migration of the Negro. He started this series in 1940. It consists of 60 images. Each of his paintings in this series consists of reasons for African Americans migrating north from the South. In this piece, we have 3 girls writing numbers on a blackboard. Their arms are raised, and each of them are just a little bit taller, and their arms reach a little bit higher. The idea here is that they are elevating themselves through education. Each of the girls are wearing brightly colored dresses. The point of many of his pieces are affirming life and happiness. The jagged edges that we see on this piece also have the idea of imparting energy.